The Barbarian Betrayal. Chapter 24. With the quarantine's failure, it was no longer just the Ronin worlds being threatened. The Ophipteran planet Hewholooksskyward, for example, cast a nervous eye to the heavens, beefing up their admittedly meager planetary defenses. This latest war, in fact, had thrown wide open a glaring loophole in the Tetrarchy's military strategy, one that had no simple solution. The planetary shields. Before the First War, the Triumvirate had hidden beneath their shields, smugly certain nothing could touch them. The Konhim quickly disabused them of that notion with their breaker missiles, specifically designed to shatter the energy barriers. It had given them the ability to rampage through the ancient worlds with impunity, until they were finally stopped with assistance from the humans. The Second War 10 years later had shown a vast improvement in ships and weapons, but little to no research had been done in regards to the shields. All available funds were being funneled into building a real navy and army, one that could stand toe-to-toe with the Konhim. The shields, already proven to be useless, were ignored, other than the desperate gamble of Operation Lacuna, the final battle of the war, stripping the shield generators from a dozen nearby worlds and using them to contain the enemy fleet. Buying enough time for the rest of the Alliance forces to arrive turned the tide, but once it was over, things returned to the status quo. Once again, the shields were ignored. 20 years passed. The shields remained in place because it was simply easier than dismantling them, inertia prevailing once again. Some half-hearted research was done, looking for ways to make improvements, but nothing had really come of it. The problem was always the same: how to make the shield function as intended, while still allowing friendly ships to enter and exit the atmosphere. Triumvirate ships, and later those of the Tetrarchy, were all fitted with a device specifically designed to interact with the energy matrix of the planetary shield, allowing it to slip through unharmed. In fact, the breaker missile was a brute force application of this same concept. Conceived independently, as all ships so fitted were designed to slag the apparatus the instant the ship came under attack. It was a fail-safe measure to prevent it from falling into unfriendly hands. The very design going all the way back to the attempted genocide of the Konhim and the formation of the Triumvirate itself. It was so ancient that its original purpose had been forgotten, and yet all vessels were still equipped the same as they always had been, with no one questioning why. The masters, however, had not forgotten. It had originally been their own technology that had provided the basis for the shields, and enclosed within the nanotech delivery systems used to turn the Ronin into mindless, murderous zombies was one small addition, giving them the ability to penetrate the shields themselves. It was the reason behind the suicidal runs against the other worlds, for in fact, the hijacked ships would merely be in the way. The subverted Ronin instead used their own metallic bodies to bypass the energy barrier, and no place was safe. Certainly not Hewholooksskyward, for as the cruiser Echidna desperately fought the rogue vessel taken from the Zyrak shipyards, its destruction merely allowed the Ronin inside the Freedom to glide undetected to the planet's surface. It being an Ophipteran world, the Ronin changed tactics. Instead of seeking out other Ronin to subvert, the few on the planet were all being held under close guard. They made their way to the centers controlling the planet's energy grid, a grid based on the same matter-antimatter annihilation technology that powered their vessels. It was almost a trivial matter to turn those same generators into bombs. "Are we about ready to get this show on the road?" Tango demanded. "I'm ready," Musashi informed her, settling into the pilot's chair. "Just waiting on Greybird's go-ahead." She turned her attention to the hacker. "Greybird?" she asked, a hint of impatience in her voice. "Hold on, just running one last system check," he snapped, vaguely annoyed. His eyes were glued to the monitor in front of him, scrutinizing the scrolling data. Tango just shook her head before glancing over at the final member of the crew. "Whisper?" Their personal lunatic had his feet propped up on the console in front of him, balancing one of his beloved daggers by the point on the tip of his finger. "Do you even need to ask?" he chuckled, not bothering to even look in her direction. Repressing a sigh, she turned her attention back to the sole holdout. "Greybird, waiting on you." "Just a second," he fired back, as the lines of code finally came to an end. "Okay, all systems appear to be ready," he said at last, "though I'm getting a couple of odd readings. Weight seems to be off." Considering how much equipment you grafted onto this shuttle, I'm not surprised, Musashi grunted. Disengaging clamps and engaging thrusters, he announced, as the shuttle fell free of Chiron, beginning its descent towards the planet's surface. I thought I'd accounted for that, he sighed as he pulled up another screen. Look, just tell me this. Whatever it is going to actually work, Tango said with feeling. Otherwise, the Tetrarchy is going to be experiencing a rather sharp population decline. It's an optically pumped quantum absorption refrigeration laser system, he sniffed. Or OPCARL for short. Didn't anyone read the summary I passed out? For some reason, his teammates suddenly found reasons to look elsewhere other than Whisper, who didn't bother. Why do I even try? He sighed once more as he went back to his instruments. I don't need to know how to build one, Tango tried again. I just need to know if it will work. It should, he said after a moment, but until we actually test it, I can't say for certain. Okay, so we find you a Ronin on the planet, preferably in the open and isolated. And then what? She asked. Then I lock them up in my sights and fire the laser, he shrugged. Assuming it's as fast as I think it is. It should drop that electronic brain to just above absolute zero almost instantly before the suicide protocol kicks in. There was a pause before he gave her a chagrined look. There is one minor detail. Of course there is, Tango said in exasperation. What is it? Might as well get this all out of the way now while we still can. It's no big deal, he explained. We just need to get in kind of close is all. Uh-huh, how close exactly? About 20 meters, Greybird mumbled. 20 meters? Did he just say 20 meters? Musashi lashed out. And you're just telling me this now? Do you have any idea how much energy that beam is going to lose for every meter it travels? Greybird shot back. And that's not even counting the attenuation. I'm sorry, but I don't have any control over the laws of physics. Wonderful, just goddamn wonderful, Musashi snarled. I'm supposed to hover this beast 20 meters off the deck while you fire your death ray and somehow keep from crashing and killing us all in the process? He turned in his seat to glare at his teammate. And you couldn't have told me this sooner? It was in the summary, he shouted back. Had you bothered to actually read it? Enough! Tango roared, bringing the conversation to an abrupt halt. Whisper? She turned to look at the third man, who was watching the argument in silent amusement. If they start up again, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, you may indulge yourself. That perked him right up, a wide grin spreading across his face as he considered the other two, licking his lips in anticipation. Musashi and Greybird shared a brief look, and then busied themselves in their instruments. Whisper looked disappointed by their sudden change in demeanor. Now then, she said, giving them a few moments to settle back down. Let's try this again. Musashi, given what we now know about the laser's limitations, can you still do this? He considered the question, and then nodded. It'll be tricky, and if the weather is bad enough, we'll have to wave off. But I think so. Musashi shot Greybird a dirty look. If I'm wrong, however, I hope everyone has made their funeral arrangements. Greybird smirked, mocking his teammate's glare. I'm having myself stuffed and mounted just like Lenin, he said brightly. It'll be a great conversation piece for clients visiting corporate headquarters. That's just bizarre, Tango said, rolling her eyes. Me, I'm planning on having the biggest blowout you've ever seen, she smirked. If security isn't called and no one gets arrested, I'll be disappointed. I've already made plans to have my body shipped home, Musashi said. My family's plot. They'll handle the rest of the details. Tango nodded, and then turned to Whisper. What about you? For some reason, the smirk disappeared. I don't want a funeral or a memorial or anything like that, he said quietly. Just scatter my ashes someplace scenic and pour one out. He fixed Tango with an odd expression. I don't want to be remembered. She blinked at that, unsure what to make of his answer, when Greybird interrupted her thoughts. I'm still getting that weird weight reading, he reported. Could you check aft? Maybe something got knocked loose. On it, she nodded as she headed to the rear of the shuttle. As small as it was, there were only a handful of compartments to check. It was the last one where she located the problem. Does your entire family have a fucking death wish? She shouted, as Taichist and Chechla cowered before her. The Barbarian Betrayal. Chapter 25. Tango glared at the two young stowaways and then shook her head. I'm not going to bother asking if your father knows you're here, she growled, grabbing each of them by the arms and dragging them out of the compartment. Just what the hell were you thinking? Did you find the problem? Greybird called back. You could say that, she snorted, as she shoved the Sorators into the main compartment. Musashi turned in his seat to look and did a double take. Oh, geez, he sighed. Get on the horn and tell them we're RTB, she snapped. Mission is scrubbed. Tango, I know we should not have snuck aboard, but we did not know what else to do, Taichist said at last. Father would never agree to us doing our duty. Since when is this your duty? She fired back. You two are way out of your depth. She looked over at Greybird. What's our ETA back to Chiron? 40 minutes, give or take, he said after a moment. If we're lucky, we can dump them off and turn around. Incoming! Tango and the kids were knocked off their feet as an explosion rocked the shuttle. Grabbing a console, she pulled herself to her feet. But with their heavier body weight, the twins were not so fortunate. The pair were tangled up together when they slammed into a bulkhead, leaving them dazed. Evasive maneuvers, she shouted. Get us out of here! I'm trying, Musashi yelled back as he fought with the controls. Status report, she snapped at Whisper, who was the only one unoccupied at that moment. We're taking ground fire, he answered, checking the display. Looks like the zombies have a new trick. Another blast shook the craft, not quite as violently as the first. Losing altitude, Musashi reported. We took a hit to the thrusters. Can we still climb out of the atmosphere? Tango asked. He checked his readings. Negative, he said with a grim finality. We're not pulling out of this one. I think I can give you a landing instead of a death dive, but you better call it in while you still can. Shit, she grimaced, grabbing onto a console. Someone up there is not going to be happy, she snapped, giving the young Sorators the evil eye. The look on Zimvoise's face was a study in horror as he faced Nasat. Sir, we've received a distress signal from the shuttle, he disclosed as he struggled to meet his eyes. They have been hit by ground fire and are making an emergency landing. Nasat nodded. Can you retrieve the team? He asked. The thought of losing Tango brought back the memory of Sergeant Lin's death with vivid clarity, and it took every gram of self-control he had to push that flashback aside. We're working on a plan now, sir, the Ophipteran answered. But he froze, unable to say the words. Speak up, Commander, Nasat ordered. Is there something else? Zimvoise closed his eyes. Yes, sir, he said at last. It seems there were 2 additions to the roster. Tango popped the emergency hatch, climbing out of the cockpit and onto the hull, giving a low whistle as she stared at the kilometers-long furrow the shuttle had gouged in the planet's soil before coming to a halt. Well, any landing you can walk away from? She shrugged before dropping back inside. Is it as bad as I think? Musashi asked. Worse, she confirmed. We're stuck until help arrives. She turned her attentions to Greybird. I don't suppose your death ray survived. It's not a death ray, he insisted, and I'm reading negative function on several key systems. Maybe I can fix it, he continued, anticipating her next question. But I won't know until I take a look. Get your toolkit, she told him as her eyes slid over to the runaways. They both bore dazed expressions as they began to unstrap themselves, and Tango grimaced as she made her decision. You two wanted to see what it was like? She snapped, as she yanked open the weapons locker. Well, congratulations. You just got your wish. She pulled out a pair of M7 assault rifles and held them out. To complete the mission, Greybird needs to fix his death ray. It's not a death ray, he yelled from across the compartment. So you two have just been appointed as his bodyguards, she finished, not missing a beat. An unreadable look passed between Chechla and her brother before they reached for the proffered weapons, holding them at port arms. I do not understand, Taichist replied. How exactly are we to do this? Tango rolled her eyes. While he's busy fixing, you kill anything that tries to stop him. Her glacier blue eyes sent chills down their spines as she glared at each of them. His life is paramount to the mission's success. Yours is not. Their eyes grew wide and Chechla started to protest, but Tango shut her down immediately. You two idiots wanted to see the elephant. Well, here he is, in all his fucking glory. The pair were still struggling to come up with a response as she turned to the rest of the team. Musashi? Whisper? Gear up. You know the drill. They were already up and moving as she reached in one more time and withdrew a long gun, cradling it in her arms. Hello, baby, she murmured. Mama missed you. Whisper had his axe tucked away once again as he and Musashi each took a grenade launcher, digging in nearby as they readied themselves. Tango was in an overwatch position topside of the wreck, scanning the horizon with her beloved Bertha, while the Sorator twins scratched out a foxhole of their own. Greybird, on the other hand, had the bulk of his laser disassembled as fought to repair the damage. Perhaps this was not the most well-thought-out idea we have had, Tychist admitted, as he threw another shovelful of dirt over his shoulder. Father will be furious with us, Chechla said in a small voice, as she worked to shore up a wall. What else could we do? Her brother sighed. Father would have kept us wrapped in a cocoon because of his fears. How could we ever justify that? There must have been a better way, she answered. If the shuttle had not crashed. But it did, Tango cut in on the radio from her perch. And maybe you couldn't have predicted that, but neither did you allow for the possibility. Which proves yet again that you are not ready. I did not realize you were listening, Tychist replied after a long silence. I'm always listening, she chuckled, before growing serious once more. I get why you did it, but it was still stupid. You're so far above your ability level at the moment that I'm surprised you haven't developed altitude sickness. In fact, her tirade came to a sudden halt. Shit, she muttered under her breath. Greybird? She asked. Where are you on those repairs? I'm still tracing the problem, he explained. Why? A loud crack came from the top of the shuttle, quickly followed by another. Because we're about to get company, she said in clipped tones. Crack. Crack. Make that a lot of company,